Hey guys, and welcome to Harry's Movie Channel. So, if you watched my last video, you'll know the top 5 films which I don't like, but a lot of other people seem to love. Well, now we're gonna switch it around a bit. These are the top 5 films which I like, and a lot of other people seem to hate. Now, again, going to sort of similar points I made in the last video, this is just my opinion. Don't judge people based on what films they like or don't like, because really, we're obviously going to disagree on things, but let's just be respectful about it. One film which somebody really likes could pass somebody else completely over. So, let's just be respectful about it. Obviously, I'm not saying that any of these films necessarily deserve acclaim from critics. These are just films which I generally tend to enjoy a lot more than most people, and I do kind of wonder why some people tend to hate them. But if you don't like these films, that's fine. It doesn't say anything about you. But without further ado, let's begin.
Number 5. Johnny English.
So I've put this film at number 5 on the list because this film, like, people don't necessarily hate it, they just generally don't remember it at all. And when people do talk about it, which is quite rare, it's usually in a negative way. And I just don't really quite understand that. I mean, I love Rowan Atkinson as as a comedic actor. I think he's fantastic. He's probably one of my favorite actors of all time, actually. And this film is a parody of the James Bond franchise, which is my favorite film franchise. So the idea of Rowan Atkinson playing a parody of the James Bond character for me is just a match made in heaven, really. I thought it was really funny. Like, particularly, there's this one scene where they're in the car chase, and his Aston Martin's like on a car removal vehicle or something, and he gets hit by the speed camera, and then just blows it up with the missiles. I thought that was really funny. Um, Also, just general, there's just these little things thrown in which work really well, I think. And I also love how Rowan Atkinson brings a lot of his Mr. Bean persona into the film, because it's kind of the idea of him making the most basic things incredibly awkward. That's so it's kind of like Mr. Bean, but a spy sort of version, which I think is really good. And I get that the story is a bit ridiculous because the villain wants to become the king of England and turn the whole of the UK into a giant prison, which is a bit absurd. But John Malkovich, the actor who plays him, just he's just so good, and his French accent very is very on point. And just his I just love over the top villains in films, and I think that John Malkovich's character is Pascal Sauvage is his name, by the way. I just think he's the quintessential comedy over the top villain, really. So yeah, I really love this film. And that's all I have to say, really.
Number 4. Ghostbusters 2.
Now, I will admit, I do have a slight problem with this film exploring pretty much the exact same themes as the original. I mean, the original Ghostbusters isn't exactly the easiest film to make a sequel from, so you can't really expect this film to be perfect, but it is very, like, all the just the basic premise of these guys stopping ghosts from New York is obviously explored again here. There isn't really anything particularly new, but I really liked the ideas of the original film. So to see it done again, I don't mind it, to be honest. I enjoyed a lot of the scenes of the film, particularly where they go down the sewer and there's all of this like pink ooze along like in the sewers where normally all the dirty water would be. That was kind of interesting. I didn't really get the scene where they control the Statue of Liberty with a Nintendo Entertainment System controller. That was a bit silly. But I had fun with this movie. Particularly just some of the usual funny things thrown in, which obviously was a big part of the original. So again, I really like it having done again in this movie. Obviously one of probably the least original sequels I've ever seen, but I'm not too bothered about originality in a film as long as the ideas in the original I still like. So I enjoy this movie. I do understand, well, I sort of understand why people could criticize the plot because it is very similar. But I don't really get how people don't get enjoyment out of this movie. I mean, obviously we're all going to be different, but I think that I just generally love the idea. As I said earlier, I do love the idea of these weird ghosts in New York and how cartoony everything is. I think that's what I really like about this franchise as a whole. So yeah, I mainly like this film because of just the premise in general. So yeah, that's why I like this movie.
Number 3, San Andreas.
So this film is kind of my placeholder for dumb disaster action thrillers. I mean, obviously you have Dwayne the Rock Johnson, who is one of my favorite actors. I think he's fantastic. He's such a badass, and he plays the lead in this film. He's one of the I think he's like a rescue yeah, sort of rescue paramedic. I really like him in this movie. I really like him, as I said, in general as an actor. He is just a lot of fun to have on screen. I love watching him just beat the hell out of guys. I mean, he doesn't do it much here, but I just think the idea of him protecting people from a very catastrophic earthquake, which is basically what happens in this movie, I thought that was really fun. Things do get very out of hand very quickly because the entire ground cracks. Obviously it's a very unrealistic disaster film because the entire Golden Gate Bridge literally falls to pieces in seconds. So I didn't really. Also, I saw that and I thought this is interesting. But I liked the all the characters. They all kind of got along with each other really well. There wasn't any. I didn't. There weren't any characters in the film which I just found annoying or anything. Which, in my opinion, I generally characters in disaster films kind of annoy me sometimes, but that didn't really happen here, so I enjoyed it. I enjoy all the action, all the sort of terror sequences. I think have really good build up. So yeah, it's just in general a dumb, fun like action disaster thriller, which I can just sit back and enjoy without really thinking too much about the quality of the film because the quality isn't great, but it is really enjoyable nonetheless, and that's why I tend to like this film a lot more than most people.
Number 2, The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift.
Now, I was thinking about putting all of the older Fast and the Furious films back when they were just about street racing and that lot, like putting all those movies at number two, but I realised that Tokyo Drift is the only one that people actually moan about quite a lot, which I think is a bit of a shame because I actually only saw this film for the first time a few weeks ago, so this is just based on one viewing experience from me. But like I think I can see. I guess the reason people don't like it mainly is because it doesn't have the original cast in it. Instead, it's got all these weird guys who you've never seen before. So yeah, I would have liked to have seen the original cast, or heck, even the original cast alongside these new guys, because I do actually like this new lineup of characters. And I don't really get why people criticize them in general, just because it's not what they used to, which is fair enough. Um, but like I've heard things about poor acting and poor storyline. No, I wouldn't really agree with that. I actually like both of those things, and I think that's what keeps the film afloat for me. I think the idea of this outsider kind of guy moving to Tokyo to learn to drift, while at the same time being pursued by this gang, I thought that was really interesting. The driving scenes are incredible, like really well shot, I think. And the final act, like where they were drifting, like where the guy was in his Mustang and then there was the Japanese guy in his Nissan, like that was really well shot as well. And I think, you know, a really good finale actually, considering that the villain in the film is so kind of, he's quite intimidating, I think, because he is like, he's got muscle. He looks like he could kill a guy with his bare hands, I guess. It's probably my favorite Fast and Furious villain out of all of them, actually. I don't know, maybe Deckard Shaw. I don't know. Either him or Jason Statham's character from Seven. One of those two would be my favorite. Um, so yeah, I think this is actually one of the stronger entries in the franchise. Really. Like I I don't really have the kind of negativity towards this film as most people do, simply mainly because of the story and the acting. Like most people don't like those things, whereas I disagree. I'm a bit more kind of into the story in this movie than I am with, let's say, the fourth Fast and Furious film, which I had no idea what was going on. that was still kind of fun, but it's that one just like I think that is the worst, really, and I don't really see why this film gets more hatred than that one. I mean, I'm not saying it deserves hate or anything. It's just a bit weird that I know this one gets hate when I think that maybe if you saw beyond the slight issues, I think no, if you haven't seen this or if you haven't seen this film in a while, give it another go because I think you probably really like it actually. Um, because I enjoyed it a lot, and I think the driving sequences are really fun, and that should obviously it's obviously not this isn't going to fit everybody's taste, but I think those two things, driving sequences and the story, are going to keep the film afloat for most people. So yeah, watch this one again if you didn't like it, because maybe you'll like it this time.
And the number one film that I like but a lot of other people seem to hate is Jurassic Park 3.
Now, before I say this, I just want to say that I don't think this film is anywhere near the levels of the original Jurassic Park, which is one of my favourite films of all time. This one, obviously, it has issues. I'm not going to deny that, but mostly minor problems. I think, like, I think the whole franchise as a whole has really good suspense sequences with the action, and this film, I quite liked the idea of it being a darker, more sort of down to earth approach for a Jurassic Park movie, because the original film was very light-hearted and it was like, oh, yeah, lots of dinosaurs, and then everything went wrong, obviously, as we all know. Yeah, really great idea. Obviously the visuals were groundbreaking for 1993. Followed it up with The Lost World, which was kind of a mixed bag, I guess. I thought it was fun, but it there was definitely room for improvement. And they have this film, which I think is an improvement over The Lost World, and quite a solid third entry, I think, and a solid conclusion to the original trilogy. Because obviously the idea of Sam Neill returning as Alan Grant, I thought was welcome. I really liked all the action. I love particularly the sort of opening sequence where the plane crashes and they're all having to defend themselves. I thought that was really fun. Um, I also liked the story as well of a teen getting trapped on this island. How he manages to survive for 8 weeks, I don't know, but never mind. I like the idea of him being rescued while at the same time they have to avoid these dinosaurs. So I thought that was an intriguing storyline. The characters are the weak part of the film, I think. I mean, particularly, I can't even remember her name, but Tia Leone's character, she's so bloody annoying. She just kind of, if it didn't have good action, I think she would have completely ruined the film for me because the good action is what wins me over. Um, so, the characters are weak, and it's a shame that they have as much screen time as they do. Um, Considering the cast in this film is quite small. I mean, there's really only like I would say about six significant characters in the film, and lots of like characters who have minor roles. But really good action, I think, and a really good story. So those are the two things which, like, if a film has good sequences and a good story, I'm almost certainly going to enjoy it. So this film has both of those things. So yeah, I really enjoy this movie, and I don't really know where all the criticism comes from. So yeah, this is a favorite of mine, and probably one of the better sequels ever made, I think. So those were the top five films which I like and a lot of other people seem to hate. Now, obviously, I'm sure you watching probably either haven't seen these movies or just generally don't like them, which is great, As I said, we're obviously going to disagree most of the time. Or maybe you tend to like them as much as I do. It's just opinion based. Obviously, I don't think that I acknowledge that all of the films I talked about have issues. I mean, I'm not going to deny that because if they didn't have problems, they wouldn't receive the criticism that they get. But I think that generally the problems that these films have can be overlooked, and the good outweighs the bad in all these films. So I enjoy them despite their problems. That's mainly what these movies are for me. They're flawed but fun, I think, if I were to sum them up. So, yeah, thank you very much for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and see you next time. Bye for now.